One of the best parts of model railroading, or any hobby for that matter, is sharing your journey and experiences with others. It's socializing, it's important. And there's no better a place to prove that point than the Models and Hobbies chat on our Discord server. It's by far the most active chat. But not everybody's on the Discord server. Some people don't use Discord. Some don't know our server exists. Some don't like big servers. Whatever the case, I don't want to force people to join the Discord to join the fun, but with how much joy and creativity we all share in this hobby, I want to give as many people I can a spotlight to share their passion. And, well, I've got a YouTube channel. What better a place to showcase than a video for the whole internet to see? Today, we're not looking at my models, we're looking at yours. A few community members actually volunteered to help with this video. I'd like to thank Dee, RPG, and KDS for their contributions towards this showcase. They've each taken a bit of the workload off of my shoulders, making this project much less of a logistical nightmare. With that all said and done, let's dive straight in. Let's see what you have today. We'll start today with a layout from the Railheader. This is my 4x8 foot 00 and 009 gauge layout that is meant to showcase a branch line in Scotland. The track plan is based on another plan titled Branch to Anywhere that I got from a Pico book. The line is also somewhat inspired by Robert Mountainet's Mirkoemen, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Mirkoemen branch, as it has two destinations on each side with a scenic divider in between. Originally, I was planning to have two 00 gauge loops, one being a main line and the other being a branch, but I thought that looked a bit too cluttered, so I opted for a 00 gauge and a 009 gauge loop to add two railways onto the board. I think this gives the layout a bit more room to breathe. One side is a cozy branch line station and shunting yard, which I haven't named yet, and the 009 section being just a little tramway. Of the two sides, this one has the most possibilities for shunting. The other side, which I have dubbed Gwalane Hills, is meant to be an industrial area for the 009 section. It includes an interchange where coal cars from the narrow gauge line are dumped onto the standard gauge open wagons. This layout is far from finished, but so far I am really happy with how this is turning out. Any tips for what could make this layout better are much appreciated. Personally, I think that 009 line was probably the right call. As you mentioned, it helps give the space more room to breathe, especially since the trains on the inner loop are smaller and fit in better. But it also gives you more opportunities to play around with more scales. That's always fun. I don't think I really have any suggestions, though. You seem to have a vision for your railroad, and it's coming together quite well. Next up, we have Digby, who doesn't have too much to say today. This is the Robertson, Cross, and Milford Railway. Soon, I'll be beginning a new DCC railway extending this line. I remember this layout from the first showcase. Nice to see some more of it this time around. I'm jealous of the fact you've managed to fit an entire donut layout in that small room. Up next is yet another uncredited submission. I've got a few things to share. To start, I've got a small circle layout that I made over this summer, basically all by myself, with the only scale things on the layout being the house and the trains. Next, I've got some pictures of some of my projects and broken locomotives. I've also included a shot of my pack-out, which has tools, parts, project locomotives, and cars that can't really fit around my room. Next, I've got a couple of photos of all my locomotives that run. I plan on repainting the one with the blue tape at some point. For my rolling stock, all of my 40-footers are in the tub in the background, and the longer cars are more visible, sitting on top of and around the tub. Gotta say, I don't think I've seen that electric Amtrak engine before in HO. That's a fun find. I feel like I've seen an eBay listing for one before, but I'm not sure what the brand is. I'm kind of oblivious to electric locomotives. We need more electrics in these showcases. Love the lineup of diesels you got there. Seems like someone likes F units, huh? Not that I'm complaining, they're classy critters. Up next is T-Crash. I recently got back into LEGO trains and figured there would be no better way to break back into the 8-stud wide hobby than by building a model of the famous Southern Railway 1102. Built back in July of 1903, the 1102 and her 37 sisters, all of which were Baldwin Locomotive Works Class F14 460s, were the largest 10-wheelers in America, and with 30,900 pounds of tractive effort, were also some of the strongest. Of course, most people would have heard of 1102 from the song Wreck of the Old 97. The model itself was a commission from Rebrickable user Nonsense Wars, and I cannot thank him enough for making the instructions for the model. She's built to 1:48 scale and is power functions equipped. I had hoped I would have the tender ready, but an issue with a Bricklink seller meant that I wouldn't be able to meet the submission deadline for this showcase. Overall, I think 1102 is the crown jewel of my collection, and I look forward to my adventures with her. Dude, the shapes on this are so nicely done. The domes, the boiler, the cab. It impresses me what people like you can do with LEGO and a little bit of creativity. You're kind of making me want to make something with my old Emerald Knight, man. Nicely done. Next up is Tetsu. The layout I'd like to show today is the Bethlehem and Beaver Falls, a fictional common carrier turned railroad museum based in southern Pennsylvania. The layout has an average size of 4x8 feet and is entirely DCC. The time period is around the present day during the snowy winter season, which is one of the least common settings for an HO scale layout. Obviously, it's got a long way to go, but I'll be sure to check in with a few updates on this little line here and there. No kidding with the snowy setting. I know some of us are scarred from mediocre Christmas train sets, but man, snow season is a great time period to model that not enough people do outside of Christmas. Oh, okay, not time period, sorry, season. I like the plan you have, though I must admit that crossing in the middle of the passing siding is simultaneously hilarious and hurting my soul. Please keep it in. It adds a lot of charm to the layout. Next is Durnado. Durnado? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I might be butchering it. Anyways. I started this as a school project for a science fair. The locomotive is based on the 1925 Siemens Schuckert electric locomotives of a little interurban railway in Chile, my home country. I started making the body of the locomotive out of matchsticks. I made the lamp with cardboard and got the light bulb from an old toy train. For the windows, I printed some images of people to give the sensation of passengers. For most of this project, I just glued things together, starting with the chassis. For the chassis, I bought 2 bogies from AliExpress. I know it wasn't the best option, but I didn't have enough money for anything else. When the bogies arrived, I welded them onto a cheap motor and then glued the chassis to the body. Finally, I made a pantograph out of some copper wires and I got an engine! But I didn't have any tracks to run it on. As I was running out of time for the science fair, I took 2 curved tracks from a cheap Christmas train set and welded on copper wires to give them some electricity. As for straight tracks, I just used cardboard and copper wires. And with that, she was done, and I presented my project to my teacher. It was so funny because he didn't believe that I could make an electric train all by myself. My train may not be the most realistic or the most beautiful, and maybe it's not the best runner, but I made it myself and I am proud of it. As you should be. Sure, a coat of paint could help to amplify the project's appearance, but I don't know of many people who can say they made a model train that runs with nothing but a motor and a truck. That's awesome, man! Next, we have DTB Harves. This is my model of Douglas, the Northwestern Railway number 10. The model is based upon the Caledonian Railway's 812 class. I built it in 00 gauge on a donor chassis from a mainline Collet goods locomotive. The model is made almost entirely out of cardboard and hot glue, and was my first to delve into scratch building a locomotive. I started this project a few years back. I used a Cadbury milk chocolate roll pack for the boiler, and made the smoke box out of cardboard. Precision is not what I was aiming for at the time, and I did everything based on if it just looked right enough. After I painted a black undercoat with only the engine itself finished, I took a break from the project. Fast forward about 2 to 3 years to this December, I had finished year 12 and had lots of free time on my hands. So, as a warm-up to get back into the hobby, I decided to finish the model. I began by building the tender. The dimensions were kind of limited by the Collet goods engine tender chassis and the height of the body shell I had made, so the proportions are a little off, but I think it captures the look and feel of the real deal. One thing I've always liked about other people's models is the real coal in the tenders or bunkers, and I wanted to achieve a similar look. I didn't have any coal at the time, but there is a stone path next to the shed with lots of smaller stones, so, carefully, with the assistance of PVA and some leaves, I sorted out some good-looking stones and dust, and made what I think is a pretty convincing coal load. Painting was relatively simple. I mixed a blue that looked right and painted the model. Sticking true to the lack of precision, all of the lining was done by hand with a thin brush. It was my first time lining, and certainly won't be my finest, but it feels right for the model, a nice conclusion for an old project. Okay, but you have no idea how many times I had to re-record this script. Cadbury milk chocolate roll pack? That is simultaneously genius and hilarious. That's a great way to learn scratch building though, and hopefully you learned a few things through this project. Up next is a pretty big submission from an uncredited submitter. I model the narrow gauge railways of southern North Wales / North Mid Wales, and do so in a few scales. Starting with the 009, I'm working to represent a fictional railway called the North Mid Wales Railway. The landscape is a short section I'm working on to develop my skills, as I have never done scenic modeling before this. It's a module and is designed to come out so I can easily work on it or expand it later. The landscape is made from layers of cardboard covered with papier-mâché painted in brown, and atop it I've added some ballast and static grass. I'm currently laying slate fences alongside the track, which was common in the region I'm modeling. The fences are made of 36 unique shapes, all of which are 3D printed, painted, and then glued in place. For the rolling stock, the 4-wheel balcony coach was designed and 3D printed by yours truly. It's a freelance design inspired by the early Chorus railway coaches. It carries the midnight blue and cream livery of my fictional railway. The slate wagons, meanwhile, are resin-printed kits by Brooks 3D. All I've done is assembled and painted them. The weathering was achieved by applying small spots of paint, then wiping most of it away. Meanwhile, both of the locomotives are ready to run models, and the box van was purchased from a railway exhibition. I've also included a couple of images of my 16mm scale rolling stock. All of these photos are taken at the I can't pronounce that. Lechfan? You know what? I'm googling this. Lechfan Garden Railway. The Laxey Loco is a model of the locomotives used on the 19-inch gauge Great Laxey Mine Railway on the Isle of Man. It's a discontinued kit produced by Locomotive. The quarry Hunslet that appears in one image was built from a kit by PDF Models. Sadly, I have no better photographs to share of this locomotive, but I will try and grab some for the next showcase. And last but not least, we have my first 3D printed design of my own, the Tallyclin Slate Truck. I hope you enjoy trying to pronounce all of the Welsh names here. To be fair, isn't that the entire fun of Welsh names? Actively knowing I'm going to do a terrible job on my first try? I always love seeing models next to the real deal. There's just something so hilarious and charming about the size comparison, you know? I like that shot with the slate truck you got. These are some nice models. I especially love that coach. Though I do have a question. You said that the coach had the paint job of your railroad. Is that just for the coaches? Or is the blue and cream also going to apply to the locomotives in some way? Next, we have T12 Productions. Both of these locomotives are painted by yours truly in what I love to call Santa Fe Spanish, my attempt at a freelance paint scheme with Spanish-inspired lettering done with a cheap Sharpie paint pen. The models in question are DCC and Sound, Roundhouse 260 and 440s respectively, with the 260 being originally painted for the Baltimore and Ohio, and the 440 being painted in New York Central. Some minor work still needs to be done to the 260 as some of the original red cab is still showing by the window panels, but both models are in a state that I'm happy with. You know, it's kind of funny to see how both these engines have inverted paint schemes on their boilers and smoke boxes. Do you have any plans to make them match each other a little more, or do you like the variation? Either way, nice job on the lettering. Those are some pretty fonts. Next up is Thermic Siphon. All of this is HO scale, with my layout being approximately 11 by 12 feet, set in the central Sierra Nevada foothills and loosely based on standard gauge railways in and around the region. I've recently expanded the layout, adding a reversing loop with a handful of industries and a hillside logging camp. There's more to come soon, but I'm waiting for the track to arrive. First up, I have a recently acquired Brass Oriental Models W.A. Woodward No. 3. I rebuilt the gearbox and replaced the gears with new ones from the Northwest short line, along with painting it in my railroad's livery. I also installed a Tsunami 2 sound decoder with a current keeper. Second is an MDC/Roundhouse SHA that I built with an aftermarket cab, bunker, and a custom-made superheater pipe. Once again, I subsequently painted, decaled, and installed a Tsunami 2 sound decoder with a keep alive. Oh, and this also got NWSL gear upgrades recently. Following up are two Fernado and Camerlengo resin kits for the logging railroad. A shielded deck flat car to haul large equipment like steam donkeys, and an AC&F Type 7 high walkway tank car for locomotive fuel. Next, I've got a brass United Pacific Coast SHA from the 1960 run. This model ran horribly. So, I replaced the upper gearbox, gears, and bearings, built a new shaft support from brass sheet, added all-wheel pickups, and once again installed a Tsunami 2 sound decoder with a current keeper. Last thing I'd like to mention is that I diorama-ized the roundhouse area so that I can add interior detail and lighting while it's sitting on my workbench. This involved tearing out the track and road bend to the new module, cutting the top out, laminating a new oversized base to the cutout, which is now the sub-base, and adding extra benchwork to support the module. I added a cork sheet and reinstalled the tracks atop it. New wiring to accommodate ease of the module's removal was implemented, and some basic terrain was added to the service area. Seems like somebody likes Tsunami, eh? Trust me, I've got a sound addiction too. I know the feeling all too well. For the engine shed, how do you plan on connecting the module to the rest of the layout? Will it be something special, or just two rails to try and line up? Or am I just misinterpreting this and it's a temporary thing? Next up is an uncredited submission. These are my N and HO scale layouts. I've got 2 engines in N and 3 in HO. I've also got a Lego diesel meant to run on N scale, but it's not finished quite yet. I've been doing this hobby since I was 3, but really got into it when I was 6. I'm kinda curious to see what engines you have. Would have been nice to have a better picture of them, you know? It's always fun to see someone's fleet. With that said, in one of the 2 images you sent, I spy a Kato N-scale pocket line steeple cab, which are excellent little engines, a Bachmann 262 in N and an 060 in HO, which are decent starter steam locomotives, and a nice Burlington low-nosed diesel of some kind. I'd love to learn what the last HO engine you have is. Feel free to let us know in the comments. We next have BS Productions. This is my wooden railway layout and some of the engines that run on it. The layout is built on an old 4x8 used for HO trains, with a couple of HO buildings still standing. The engines range from 3D printed, to fully custom, to repainted Target models. Once my 3D printer gets going again, I will have a whole fleet of engines! I gotta say, that method for a pilot and trailing truck on your 3D printed engine is pretty clever. I know it's not unheard of or anything in this hobby, but it's nice to see it in action here, with wooden trains. Trust me, I remember just how frustrated younger me was with the limits of wooden train steam locomotives back in the day. And a little bit of that spite lives on in my soul. Nice setup you got here. Next up is KS1 Productions. Here, I have an engine that I have been slowly chipping away on for the better part of a year now. I bought BGKRR number 7 from a train show 2 years ago with the plan of doing this to her. She's a Roundhouse 280 kit from the 1980s and was painted in what I best call Dip Tank B&O Royal Blue, with all but the wheels and wood load being blue. I plan to do her in the look she would have had between 1925 and modern day. I just need to get the stack painted gray with coal stains, and the stack cap being white, as well as getting some lettering and numbering done up for her. Dip Tank is an apt description of how that engine looked. Not to say the gold and blue look bad, I do like the color combo, but it was a bit excessive. You've done some good work making her look a lot nicer. Up next is Stone Mason. I started with model railroads just a year ago now, as I got the opportunity to do machining in school with plenty of free materials. So far, I've made 2 locomotives and 2 types of rolling stock. My first model was the Cracker, a simple-ish G-scale live steam locomotive. I found the drawings for free on the internet, but I didn't follow them exactly, as I extended the frame, added a Lincoln pin coupler, and threw on trailing wheels with some other additional details. She runs on lighter gas, and weighs 2,200 grams when she doesn't have any water in her. My second locomotive is based on the Wingrove & Rogers 040 battery electric type W217 for mine usage. I first found out about this locomotive from a Lori's Mechanical Marvels video and instantly fell in love with a little blue box. So I decided to make something simpler than the steam engine to run. Luckily, I found some drawings of the locomotive on Flickr by Jay Tilston. The photos didn't have any measurements, but it worked great as a template. The biggest challenge I had with building this engine was fitting the motor in, because I wanted it to be accurate to the real-life counterpart, and this time I even took some photos while I was making it. The engine has a 3-volt 3-pole motor and runs on 2 C-type batteries. She weighs 730 grams and is able to run 3 speeds forwards and backwards. If I put in quality batteries, she runs surprisingly well, being able to pull 2 kilograms, though it does need a little push because it runs out of traction when getting started. And finally, the tracks and rolling stock. Larger model railroads are not very common where I'm from, so the G-scale track was too expensive for me. So, I made my own track that cost me around $1. The rolling stock was my favorite to make. The first cart I made had a handbrake, but it was a little too janky, so the second version of the wooden carts are a lot more rigid and better looking in my opinion. The steel carts are roughly based on the Hudson tipper wagons, but I haven't finished the buckets yet. I don't have a name for the locomotives, but the name of the railroad is going to be the LBR, the Low Budget Railroad. I'd like to propose a change for your railroad's name. Sure, it's low budget, but the fact that you've made a working live steam engine yourself is one heck of a flex. Not to mention the rest of this stuff. Multiple scratch-built cars, a working handbrake, your own tracks. LBR is a fine name, don't get me wrong, but why not add a nod to how much work you've done on this stuff, like, say, the Low Budget and Machining Railway? Just a little bit of food for thought. This stuff looks amazing. Next, we have a few locomotives from Northwestern Man. I've got a few things to share today. The bigger tank engine is an E4 and the smaller one is an A1. Both locomotives came from the LBSCR. The next 2 models are of Thomas and Scarlowe, and these 2 are my favorite models. I've never been more satisfied with my own work before. Thomas is a 3D print, while Scarlowe is a heavily modified Bachmann Scarlowe. I've included a picture of Scarlowe with some of the passenger cars that I've also repainted from the Bachmann-Thomas line, and a shot of Scarlowe from before I painted him. The last models that I'd like to showcase are works in progress. 2 E2 tank engines once again from the LBSCR. The one without any primer is going to become my new Thomas that will replace the old one, and the other one will wind up in BR Black. Dude, that lining on your Thomas is exquisite. If you're gonna have another go at it when you have such clean results already, I can only imagine the next attempt is going to be amazing. Nice work. Next, we have a submission from Duke of the MSR. This is a semi-custom made model which runs on a Kato 11109 chassis. The locomotive frame was made from a 009 engine I found on Thingiverse, alongside a wagon, funnel, and lamp from various different narrow gauge models. The boiler and water tanks I made all by myself in Tinkercad. I've sprayed the shell in Tamiya Black and used apple barrel territorial beige for the wood sides. The model is supposed to represent a slapdash engine built for my railroad. Since they didn't have a locomotive, they decided to build one themselves. I got the idea for the engine from a video by History in the Dark, where he mentions the ballast locomotive from Australia. I got kind of inspired by it and decided to build a boiler and a wagon myself. Ah, railroading jank at its finest. I'm always a fan of seeing a niche locomotive here and there. Look at this little guy. Next is TMF Studios. Welcome to the Betwoo Railway. Located in Welsh coal country on an island connected to the mainland by a bridge, operating since 1880. It links with the Glendonium and Bellington Tramway, a 2-foot gauge line from 1868 that runs into the Bellington Mountains and serves the massive coal mines of the region. The railway's headquarters, terminus, and main facilities are in Betwoo, with a branch line extending to the coastal town of Lisle. The layout features stations at Betwoo and Glendonium, which are planned to merge, although currently only a brick warehouse represents the town. Betwoo Station is unfinished, lacking printed and raised platforms, and awaiting 2 large canopies for the terminal and through lines. The greenery is incomplete, with more materials needed, and Glendonium's narrow gauge section is only represented with placeholder Kato Unitrack as of now. Eventually, the narrow gauge line will cross a bridge near Betwoo Yard, looping onto a dresser where the mines will be modeled, along with the sheds, a fueling depot, and sidings. The River Glend will be created using resin, and while other lore like Betwoo's intercity tramway exists, it's not included on this layout. Ooh, when you say dresser, I don't seem to see one, but I do see a closet. Is the narrow gauge line going to run into that closet? That'll be a fun sight to see once it's done, assuming that's what's happening, of course. Nice little layout so far. And I love the faces you did on those wooden trains. Up next is another uncredited submission. Goodness, we've got a lot of those this time around. I've been collecting model trains, mostly British, though see if you can spot the big boy, for quite a while now, probably about 15 years. I'd been working on a layout on and off for quite some time, but wasn't very happy with it. Moving house this summer gave me the chance to get started on a new layout. It's a bit basic, currently just 2 loops of track with a passing loop each, one of which is still under construction, but I was able to get some long lengths of track. It goes around the walls of my room, with the main station board coming across the middle. To actually get access to my room, I had to make half of the loop removable. I haven't done much carpentry before, but I've watched a lot of YouTube videos, so the detachable baseboards went surprisingly well. I'm very happy with it so far, and I can watch the trains go round and past my window when I sit at my desk. It makes for some great photos. I can't wait to get some actual scenery done. There's definitely a few kits in the stash. Might make the bridge across the window a bit more scenic while I'm at it. Man, that view out the window is going to be killer once you spruce up the scene. I know it might be hard to do with the current baseboard, but imagine a huge arch bridge with your computer sitting below the center, and the sunlight shining through the window and trains running across the scene. There might be a stretch with what's possible, but either way, that's gonna be a fun scene to see once done. Also, heck yeah, a center-operated donut layout? And to wrap things up, we have our editor, Mr. Didi, who actually has a tiny video time-lapse of their own to share. Sadly, I don't have much to show beyond a simple plank layout. An O-scale figure I painted and based, and intend to use more as a stand-in for a TTRPG miniature, and a small way car I made from spare bits and matchsticks. I have plans for the next showcase, though, as long as my orders arrive on time. This darn mountain weather and the Christmas rush. I just have to mention it's hilarious that you say, "It's portable too" in the video. Yeah, at that size, I would sure hope it was. Matchsticks are not what I would first think to use for a project, but now that I have a second to actually think about it, yeah, that checks out. I mean, I've used popsicle sticks, so it makes sense, but it's just funny to me to imagine using objects intended to be lit on fire as just normal modeling material. It's also kind of ironic to mention, Christmas in June. If we waited just a month to release this video, we could have scraped that Christmas in July advertisement from H.H. Gregg. Actually, you know what? Do it anyways. Though, with that said, we are finally at the end of our winter showcase. Yes, the winter one, the one we started in January. 80 submissions, we did it! Considering the timeliness of this video, showcases are probably going to have to be organized a little differently in the future. But it's been a blast seeing what you guys have to share with us. And now that this set of showcases is over, we can get started on the next very soon. Keep your eyes open, we'll have submissions pretty soon. Thank you for your patience. Thanks again to DD, Katie, and RPG for their help, and thank you for watching. Cheers, folks.